3, The Battle with the Weeds. The early summer sun had barely risen when Sheila stepped into her garden, ready for a full day of work. Her garden had grown beautifully over the last few weeks, thanks to her newfound connection with the plants. The sunflowers stood tall and proud, for her vegetables were ripening in the warm sun. But as she walked between the rows, something caught her eye. A patch of weeds creeping into her garden beds. Sheila frowned, kneeling down to inspect them. She heard gardeners complain about weeds, but she had never dealt with them herself until now. At first, the weeds seemed manageable, Sheila pulled up a few here and there, thinking it would be an easy fix. But within a few days, she noticed that the weeds had returned, even stronger and even more than before. They were spreading quickly, wrapping around her tomato plants and tangling all in her herbs. Frustration started to set in her. How did this happen so fast? She just kind of talking underneath her breath, and as she was yanking at them stubborn roots. She spent hours pulling weeds, her hands aching and covered in dirt, only to wake up the next morning and find even more. Needless to say, Sheila was feeling defeated, so she decided to visit her local gardening store for advice. She met Mr. Carter, an older man with decades of experience, who had helped her when she first started gardening. "Ah, weeds," Mr. Carter said, as Sheila explained her predicament to him. "They're the gardener's biggest challenge. You can't just pull them up and be done. You have to get to the root of the problem, literally." Sheila nodded, eager for more guidance. "But how do I keep them from coming back? It feels like a never-ending battle." Mr. Carter leaned over the counter to offer his advice and his wisdom. "The key to understanding why the weeds are growing in the first place, young lady, they thrive in weak soil, covered with mulch. And make sure you pull the weeds out completely, roots and all. Otherwise, they'll just keep coming back." Armed with Mr. Carter's advice, Sheila returned to her garden with renewed determination. She started by inspecting the soil where the weeds had taken over. It was dry and compacted, perfect conditions for those weeds to thrive. She spent the next few days working the soil, adding compost and mixing in nutrients to give her plants a fighting chance. She laid down a thick layer of mulch around her vegetables and her flowers to keep those weeds from coming back. But the battle wasn't over. Sheila knew she had to be vigilant. Every morning, she carefully examined the garden, pulling up even the smallest weed before it had a chance to take root. The work was exhausting, and there were moments when Sheila wondered if it was worth it. But with each weed she removed, she felt a sense of accomplishment. Just when Sheila thought she was making progress, a heavy rainstorm hit, soaking the garden and bringing with it a fresh wave of weeds. By the next morning, her mulch had shifted and new weeds had sprouted everywhere. Her heart sank and she realized the fight wasn't over. Sheila spent the day battling the weeds one more time, pulling and digging and even reapplying mulch. Her hands were blistered and her back was aching, but she refused to give up. She remembered Mr. Carter's words. It's a battle, but one you can win. As she worked, Sheila noticed that the soil was improving. The mulch was helping to retain moisture, and her plants seemed healthier and stronger. Slowly and surely, her garden was bouncing back, even as the weeds continued to challenge her. Weeks passed, and Sheila's hard work began to pay off. The weeds became fewer and farther between, and her plants flourished. The once barren soil was now rich and healthy, and her vegetables were ripening faster than ever. One evening, as she sat on her porch and sipping her teeth. Sheila looked out over her garden with pride. She had won the battle with the weeds, but more importantly, she had learned that gardening wasn't just about growing beautiful plants. It was about perseverance, patience, and the willingness to work through a challenge. The few remaining weeds are no match for her strong, healthy plants which tower above them. Sheila smiles, knowing that while there will always be more battles ahead, she's ready for whatever the garden throws her way. Sheila stood there softly whispering to herself, gardening is a journey. You can't win every battle, but with time and care, the garden always rewards you. Okay guys, that's our story for today. That's story number 3 of our adventures for beginner gardeners. If you like these types of story times, please consider subscribing, hit the notification bell so you are alerted when the next short story is uploaded. I thank you guys for your time. I thank you for even clicking on the video and listening to the short story. I hope to see you in the next video. Have a great day.